What's up, guys? You're now listening to Devo with Uncle Theo. Today is day 252, and we're going to cover Ezekiel chapters 29 through 32. So we've covered a lot of signs from Ezekiel. There's only one more to cover in chapter 37, and we've been talking about the prophecies and the falls of many nations, just like Isaiah did. And today is no different. We're going to cover a few more of those nations, and again, short of the very famous chapter of Ezekiel 33. And we'll pick that up on tomorrow. So let's cover some more nations. Here we have a prophecy against Egypt in chapters 29 through 32. So it's going to be a series of 7 prophecies against Egypt. And it's said that this is most likely offered around the time Egypt was encouraging Israel to stand up against Nebuchadnezzar. And we all know that doesn't work out well. It says here in verse 1, in the 10th year, in the 10th of the 12th day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak to him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, you great monster lying among your streams. You say the Nile belongs to me. I made it for myself, but I will put hooks in your jaws and make the fish of your streams stick to your scales. I will leave you in the desert, you and all the fish of the streams. The second prophecy picks up in verse 17, where it shows how Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, drove his army in a hard campaign against Tyre. And he says, on that day I will make a horn grow for the Israelites, and I will open your mouth among them. Then they will know that I am the Lord. That moves on into the third prophecy in chapter 30, which continues against Egypt. The word of the Lord came to me, son of man, prophesy and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. And say, alas, for that day, for the day of the Lord is near, the day of clouds, a time of doom for the nations. When the slain fall in Egypt, her wealth will be carried away and her fountains torn down. And we get the fourth prophecy in verse 20. In the 11th year, in the first month of the 7th day, the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. It has not been bound up to be healed or put in a splint so that it may become strong enough to hold a sword. But he says, I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon and put my sword in his hand. But I will break the arms of Pharaoh, and he will groan before him like a mortally wounded man. I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, but the arms of Pharaoh will fall limp. Then they will know that I am the Lord when I put my sword in the hand of the king of Babylon, and he brandishes it against Egypt. I will disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. Then they will know that I am the Lord. And our fifth prophecy goes into chapter 31. In the 11th year, in the 3rd month of the 1st day, the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and his hordes, who can be compared with you in majesty? Consider Assyria, once a cedar of Lebanon with beautiful branches overshadowing the forest. So that analogy of a cedar is once showing, remember how powerful Assyria was? They came and took the northern nation, but Babylon is coming. And Isaiah was saying that the whole time in his prophecy, watch out for Babylon. And they're here, and God is prophesying through Ezekiel about it. He prophesies for a 6th time in chapter 32. In verse 1, he says, in the 12th year of the 12th month, on the 1st day, the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, take up a lament concerning Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say to him, you are a lion among nations. You are a monster in the seas, thrashing about your streams, churning the water with your feet and muddying the streams. This is what the sovereign Lord says. With a great throng of people, I will cast my net over you, and they will haul you up in my net. I will throw you on the land and hurl you in the open field. I will let all the birds of the sky settle on you, and all the animals of the wild gorge themselves on you. I will spread your flesh on the mountains and fill the valleys with your remains. And we get the 7th and final prophecy in verses 17 through the end of the chapter. It says, in the 12th year, on the 15th day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, wail for the whores of Egypt, and consign to the earth below both her and the daughters of mighty nations, along with those who go down to the pit. Say to them, are you more favored than others? Go down and lay among the uncircumcised. They will fall among those killed by the sword is drawn. Let her be dragged off with her hordes. And this chapter ends by saying, Pharaoh, he and all his army will see them, and he will be consoled for all his hordes that were killed by the sword, declares the sovereign Lord. Although I had him spread terror in the land of the living, Pharaoh and all his hordes will be laid among the uncircumcised, and those killed by the sword, declares the sovereign Lord. And I know nothing too exciting there as we went through those 7 prophecies today, but we need to know those because it's one domino in the chain of events of all of the nations collapsing and Babylon taking all of these nations and taking Israel into their midst. And this is what makes way for Daniel and how he's able to rise amongst the ranks with Nebuchadnezzar, and how the Lord uses Nebuchadnezzar in mighty ways as his instrument until he's humbled for a season and obviously eventually taken over by the Medo-Persians when we read about Cyrus and Darius and all of those other kings. But this is part of history that we need to know because it helps us understand what's happening during these times of the prophets. And Ezekiel is going through the exile. He's in the middle of the exile and he's teaching us what's going on in that time period. So God is continuing to use Ezekiel to preach his unpopular word amongst people who do not want to hear what he has to say, but he's faithfully preaching the word of God. And we can learn from Ezekiel because of how he preaches the truth in such harsh conditions. We very well can do it in our comfortable conditions in America. And I want to encourage you to hold fast to the word of God, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. Glean from men like Ezekiel, who had it much harder than you, to draw strength from when you're having a hard time standing up for truth in a world of lies. And also know that there are many other men and women across not just the world, but even in the U.S. with you who haven't bowed the knee to Baal and who never will. Hold fast to your faith, whether you're in the U.S. during these tumultuous times as we enter a circus of an election cycle, or if you're anywhere else in the world and you may be suffering just like Ezekiel had to. Don't gloss over this prophet. He has much to say about history. The Lord uses him, and the Lord can nourish your faith through him, helping you to endure to the end, no matter your conditions or your circumstances. You guys take care and have a good day.